Hello everyone, welcome to the video on cholinergic system, which is also known as parasympathetic system. In this video I am going to explain about how the neurotransmitter release will be and what kind of receptors the neurotransmitter will be acting on and what are the physiological actions and what are the various drugs and their therapeutic uses. Now this is my YouTube channel. If you like my videos, do subscribe and share. Let us get into the topic. Now, parasympathetic nervous system. Most of these visceral organs will have two kinds of neuronal innervation. Autonomic neurons, both of them will innervate these visceral organs. One is sympathetic system, another one is parasympathetic system. Both of them will regulate the function of that visceral organs. Usually both of them will have opposing actions. Because this cholinergic system is acting in accordance with this sympathetic system, it is also known as parasympathetic system. The neurotransmitter which is released is acetylcholine, hence this is also known as cholinergic system. Now let us understand the anatomy of this cholinergic system. This system and sympathetic system, both of them are known as two neuron system. That means you have two neurons are there. One of the neuron is known as preganglionic neuron, which is myelinated, which is before this ganglion. Now another neuron is known as postganglionic neuron. Post means after ganglion, and it is unmyelinated. This one is unmyelinated. So you have two neurons are there. One is myelinated preganglionic, and the other one is unmyelinated postganglionic. Because these two neurons are there, this is also known as two neuronal system. Now, see, parasympathetic system is also known as craniosacral system. Craniosacral. Why it is called? Because the parasympathetic division comes out through the cranial nerves of 3, 7, 9 and 10. Not only that, it also comes out through sacral nerves S2, S3 and S4. So how is it coming? From cranial nerves and as well as sacral nerves. Hence it is also known as craniosacral system. In case of sympathetic system, it is known as thoracolumbar system because it is coming out from thoracic nerves and lumbar nerves. So understand, all of them are the same. Cholinergic system, it is because of release of neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Parasympathetic system, which is acting in accordance with sympathetic system, hence it is known as parasympathetic. Craniosacral, because it comes out through cranial and sacral nerves, hence it is known as craniosacral one. All of them are the same things. Right? Let's move on to the next thing. Now, the release of neurotransmitter. So, how the acetylcholine releases from the neurons. See, the biosynthesis of acetylcholine takes place at the end of the neuron. It starts with choline. Choline is uptaken into the neuron. It combines with acetyl-CoA in presence of this enzyme, choline acetyl transferase. The job of this enzyme is to combine choline and acetyl-CoA and form acetylcholine. Once it is formed, it is stored in these vesicles. Understand these things. Not only acetylcholine, norepinephrine also it stores in the vesicles. When there is a proper signal comes and calcium influx occurs, it causes the release of this neurotransmitter. Once it is released, it will be acting on receptors like muscarine and nicotine. Once the receptor action is done, it is metabolized with the help of enzyme acetylcholine esterase. Acetylcholine esterase. The job of this enzyme is it will split, it will metabolize acetylcholine into choline as well as acetate. So this is what happens, only these steps are there. Two enzymes are important, choline acetyl transferase, acetylcholine esterase. Now look at them. See, the first step, uptake of choline into the neuron, is inhibited by hemicholinum. So hemicholinum inhibits the uptake of choline. Second one, the release of acetylcholine is inhibited by botulinum toxin. The food poisoning is caused by botulinum toxin. Now what happens in this food poisoning is this bacteria releases a botulinum toxin which inhibits the release of acetylcholine. When the release is inhibited, gastric secretions are inhibited, motility is inhibited, and that is what results in diarrhea. Right. Now there are certain drugs which are acting on this acetylcholine esterase. Now understand this one, acetylcholine esterase metabolizes acetylcholine. When you inhibit this, what happens? Acetylcholine levels increases. Now there are some other drugs which are acting on these receptors. Let us see about all of them. Now basically the cholinergic receptors, as we have seen, we have two kinds of receptors are there, muscarinic receptors, nicotinic receptors. Now where do you find these nicotinic receptors? Nicotinic receptors are present on ganglia as well as adrenal medulla. These are considered as NN because it is present on neurons, neuronal ganglia and adrenal medulla. Whereas the other kind of nicotinic receptors which are present in neuromuscular junction are known as NM. So two kinds of receptors, NN because they are present on neurons like ganglia and adrenal medulla. The other one is on neuromuscular junction, NM. Now whereas in case of muscarinic you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 types are there, M1, M2, M3, M4, M5. Now look at them, all of the receptors are present in CNS. Leaving that part, what do we need to understand is M1 is mainly present in gastric ganglia, M2 is present on heart, and rest of all the visceral organs contains M3. I'll elaborate this. Let us see this one. Let us see the muscarinic receptor activation and what happens with this one. Look at them. Every organ has got muscarinic receptors are present. Now what is important is, look at this, M2 is specifically present in heart. This is what we need to remember. And M1 which is specifically present on GI tract. Rest of all the tissues has got, rest of all the organs has got M3. Right? So only remember M1 is present on gastric tract, M2 is on cardiac tissue, whereas M3 is widely present. Right? Now when you see the actions on eye, it will be acting on sphincter and ciliary muscles. It causes contraction of sphincter, and this is what causes meiosis, pupil contraction. Whereas ciliary muscle contraction results in accommodation for near vision. So these two are the effects on eye. In heart, all are reduced. Heart rate is reduced, negative chronotropy. Conduction velocity is reduced, negative dromotropy. In lungs, it causes bronchospasm and increases secretions. Now in GI tract, it causes increase in motility, may cause cramps. GI secretions are increased, and again it causes contraction which may lead to diarrhea and involuntary defecation. Now in bladder, it also causes relaxation, urinary incontinence. That means without consciousness, urine passage will occur. In case of sphincters, the sphincters are relaxed. Now in case of glands, all the secretion occurs like sweat glands, salivation and lacrimation. Now this one is important, the last one. On blood vessels, there is no direct innervation of cholinergic system is there. See, no innervation. But how do they affect? They cause their effect of blood vessel dilation by release of nitric oxide. See, direct innervation is there, they releases nitric oxide which will cause blood vessel dilation. So these are all the effects of muscarinic receptor. Now let us get into the nicotinic receptor action. On adrenal medulla, when it is stimulated, it releases epinephrine and norepinephrine into the blood circulation. On autonomic ganglia, the stimulation may have effects depends upon both the systems. See, remember ganglia is present between preganglion and postganglion. Tweaking that will affect both the systems, parasympathetic as well as sympathetic system. It depends on the domination of the effect. Now on muscle junction, the stimulation always results in hyperactivity. So this is about nicotinic receptors. Now when you see the types of what kind of receptors are there, the odd number one, M1 and M3 are related to G protein coupled receptors of GQ type. I have already explained a video about G protein coupled receptors. Based upon the G alpha protein, there are three types are there, GQ, GS and GI. In case of M1 and M3, they are related to GQ coupled receptor. The effects are, it increases phospholipid C, increases inositol triphosphate, diacylglycerol and calcium. All of them are second messengers. Whereas M2, the even number one related to GI, which inhibits or reduces adenylate cyclase activity, reduces cyclic KMP. Whereas in case of nicotinic neuronal and muscular, they are related to sodium potassium channel. So muscarinic is G protein coupled receptor, whereas nicotine is ion channel one. So these are all the effects of receptors and the receptor types. When you put all of them together, this is what happens. So this is a mnemonic. Keep this thing in your mind. SLUDD means activation of parasympathetic system causes salivation, lacrimation, urination, digestion and defecation. So the system is also known as rest and digest. That means what all the things happens when you are at rest, when you are digesting food, that is because of acetylcholine release. Now understand this system is very important for human survival. The reason is digestion. With the digestion we get ATP. With the ATP, human survival is possible. There is an experiment which is conducted on frog, and on the frog, sympathetic system is cut off, but frog survived. Whereas when parasympathetic system is cut off, the frog death occurred. Why? Because parasympathetic system is essential for our survival, because it takes care of digestion, from which we get ATP, which is energy currency for human beings. Now Getting into the drugs. See, cholinergic drugs, you have two classes are there, directly acting, indirectly acting. Understand them, directly acting drugs will be acting directly on receptors, hence they are known as directly acting drugs. Indirectly acting drugs will inhibit acetylcholine metabolizing enzyme. What happens with this? When acetylcholine metabolizing enzyme is inhibited, it causes increase of acetylcholine that will act on receptors. So these drugs are not directly acting on receptors, indirectly increasing the levels of acetylcholine, hence they are known as indirectly acting. Now, in case of directly acting drugs, what all the things we have? Acetylcholine, pilocarpine, bethanechol, methacholine, carbachol are there. Now, indirectly acting, again they are classified as reversible. That means the inhibition of this enzyme is for some time. Irreversible, the inhibition of this enzyme is permanent. These are dangerous drugs. Now, in case of reversible, we have lipid soluble and water soluble are there. What is the significance of lipid soluble? They can get into central nervous system. We have seen all the receptors are present in CNS. You know, M1, M2, M3, all the muscarinic receptors are present on CNS. Physostigmine, tacrine, donepezil, rivastigmine, galantamine are example for this one. Whereas water soluble one, neostigmine, pyridostigmine and edrophonium. Organophosphates, clinically these are not used to treat any diseases. They are used as nerve gases and insecticides, malathion, parathion, ecothiopate, nerve gases kind of thing. See, they irreversibly inhibit this enzyme and there is an enormous increase of acetylcholine will be there. And if you remember, salivation, lacrimation, urination, defecation continuously occurs, which will result in dehydration. Finally, it may cause death also. So these agents are not used clinically. They are used as insecticides or nerve gases. Let us get into the details. Now see, acetylcholine, the problem with acetylcholine is it will be acting on muscarine and nicotinic receptors, but it will get immediately hydrolyzed by acetylcholine esterase. If it is immediately getting hydrolyzed, it will have very short half-life. No clinical use will be there. To overcome this problem, researchers have come up with bethanechol, which acts only on muscarine. The important thing is this: it will not be hydrolyzed by acetylcholine esterase, so it will have longer duration of action. So it is used to treat ileus. Ileus is a condition known as gastric atony. What do you mean by atony? Tonicity means the ability to contract. Gastric atony means the gastrointestinal tract lost its contractile ability. So if you remember, M2 receptors are working on gastric tract, and when they are stimulated, they cause contraction. So how the contraction will occur? Because bethanechol will be acting on this M2 receptor and it is used to treat this gastric atony condition called as ileus. Usually post-operative condition or in certain neurological condition, this condition occurs. And in certain cases, to treat urinary retention. People, when they cannot pass their urine, these drugs will act on that muscarinic receptor and causes urinary voiding. Now another drug is methacholine, which has got both receptors activity but prominently muscarinic activity, but understand it also gets metabolized by acetylcholine esterase. It is used for diagnosis. DX indicates diagnosis, RX indicates treatment. It is used to diagnose bronchial hyperreactivity. Now another two alkaloids like pilocarpine, cevimeline, they have only muscarinic activity. They are used to treat xerostomia. Xerostomia means dryness of mouth. Dryness of mouth. You know, zero means without water. Xerophytes means desert plants, like that. And they are also used to treat glaucoma. Like pilocarpine is used to treat glaucoma. So these are all the clinical uses of direct acting cholinomimetics. Whereas indirect acting cholinomimetics, you know, edrophonium is short acting one, which is used to diagnose myasthenia gravis. Understand these two things. You have two agents which are used for diagnosis. Bronchial hyperreactivity is diagnosed by methacholine, whereas myasthenia gravis is diagnosed by edrophonium. Physostigmine is used to treat glaucoma and it is an antidote for atropine overdose. What is atropine? It is anticholinergic. So how do you treat it? By giving a cholinergic agonist like physostigmine. Now neostigmine, pyridostigmine, they are also used to treat gastric atony, urinary retention, myasthenia gravis, reversal of non-depolarizing neuromuscular blocker. Now understand this one. Maya means muscle. Asthenia means weakness. So in certain people, muscle weakness is there because of reduced number of nicotinic receptors, and by giving these drugs, more amount of acetylcholine, by giving these drugs, the nicotinic receptors will get activated and the condition is treated. Now understand this one. So neostigmine, pyridostigmine will be acting on nicotinic receptors. That is the reason why they are also used to treat neuromuscular blockade. Next one, Donepezil reverse stigmine. If you remember, they have high lipid solubility. They will get into central nervous system. They are lipid soluble, hence they are used to treat Alzheimer's disease, a memory loss disease. Last but not the least, organophosphates, lipid soluble irreversible inhibitors. They are only used as insecticides and nerve gases. Nerve gases are toxins. So these are all the clinical uses of indirectly acting cholinomimetics. When you put all of them together, see, muscarinic drugs uses to treat glaucoma, pilocarpine, physostigmine, ichthyopate is used. Alzheimer's, CNS, lipid soluble, tacrine, donepezil, rivastigmine, galantamine are used. Atropine poisoning can be treated by physostigmine. Whereas there is a syndrome called as Sjogren syndrome, whereas xerostomia is the main condition. Lacrimation will not be there, salivation will not be there. It can be treated by pilocarpine and cevimeline. To diagnose the bronchial hyperreactivity, methacholine is used. Now, paralytic ileus or gastric atone is treated by bethanechol, neostigmine. Urinary retention can be treated by the same drugs. Whereas drugs acting on nicotinic receptors, muscle relaxant reversal can be carried by neostigmine and pyridostigmine. Whereas cobra bite can be treated by the same drugs, neostigmine and pyridostigmine. Understand this one, cobra bite also the toxin blocks nicotinic receptors. So to activate the nicotinic receptors, these drugs should be used. Diagnosis of myasthenia gravis by hydrophonium. Treatment is by neostigmine and pyridostigmine. Take a screenshot of this, which is very useful for all competitive examinations. Thank you for listening to this video. If you like the video, do subscribe and share.